Andrew, welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Adam, it's great to be here. I just love what you're working on. I'm honored just to be given all the talented guests you've had just to get to hang out with you for a little bit.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm really excited to get into this conversation all about being intentional with your money and really using it to create the life that you want, which is very much what this podcast is about. So before we get into that, Andrew, I'd love to have you start by sharing a little bit about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to in the world.
I'll make it brief because I've learned most folks don't really care a whole lot about what we're doing. It's all about their story. But just briefly, so maybe somebody listening could connect. I grew up in a small town in Alabama. My dad was a general surgeon. My mom stayed at home. I'm one of three, the oldest. Graduated from high school, ran in college at Auburn University in Alabama. Originally went there to go in pre-med. I'd spent 2 weeks or more in 22 specialties around medicine. I got to leverage my dad's career and relationships for that. I never quite made it over the hurdle for medical school. And at the time, there was a mistake that my counselor gave me in the School of Business, and I was getting a marketing degree. And little did I know, as I've learned more as I get older, everything happens in perfect timing. And it's just, are we aware of why it's in our story, why it's in our movie, which is really speaks to awareness and being present, right? During my time running at Auburn, had a great time, learned all kinds of things, met some great people like Peyton Manning when he was one of the top 10 scholar athletes for the NCAA. And here's what's funny. We see him and his brother Eli on TV all the time, but I heard him give his acceptance speech and he was literally reading it off of note cards. So that's great inspiration that we all can, be way more than maybe we anticipate at the time. And then I went straight from Auburn to Atlanta and landed at IBM, sold a big deal against the odds and didn't get paid for it. And I basically said, look, there's something wrong here. And so I always knew I wanted to run my own deal, but I didn't think at 22 with a newborn in the house, I was young and I didn't know any better. I just was, they call it full of vinegar and you can finish the sentence there. But I basically walked in and told my manager, hey, something's wrong. He's like, oh, no, it's good. And I go, okay, well, it's not good with me. You got 2 weeks. Either pay me what I earned because they changed the bonus, or give me a promotion. And I'm not looking for a change in title. Like I want something meaningful so this won't ever happen again. About 2 weeks and change, I walked in and said, hey, I was dishonest with you. We need to talk. He's like, oh, I'm sure we can fix it. And what is it? And I said, I told you I'd give you 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks and about 6 hours. Nothing's changed. I'm out of here. And he's like, wait, what? And I had my box packed up and I walked out and people thought I was crazy. And I was successful. So I made it to another company, but then got blindsided in a layoff. And so here I was. Now I really had to go find something. And that's how I got into the financial services business, ran an FMO in the health insurance business. And then along came the Affordable Care Act, where the politicians got even deeper ingrained in our healthcare and all that stuff. And nobody moved my cheese. It was just gone. That led to starting a college planning business. And through that experience in COVID, that became the watershed moment where COVID, I think, made a lot of us really think like what's important, not like surface area, what's deeply important. So out of that came the desire to help the kids and the families that we've helped not spend 30, 40, $80,000 a year on college. How do we build on that? And how do we help them be better stewards and consumers and intentional with their finances? And so the space that I love more than anything, as we've talked about, I love hearing stories of how entrepreneurs get into what they do and what prompted it. And then that stumbling journey and just keeping getting up over and over again. But one of the things that I watched with my father and I watch with business owners, which is what I seek to solve, is that we're all created to do 3 to 5 things uniquely well. Like, in a great exercise is just to ask the people around us that know us best, if you were thinking of a word in Wikipedia or a dictionary that, like, when you think of me, you would think I would have my picture right next to that word. That's who I would be. that's a great way to kind of do a 360 and get feedback on what those are. And so business owners always start their business using and leveraging a couple of those unique capabilities. And where they go astray with intentionality and awareness is that we get stressed and distractions. And so I love taking all the finances off of their plate, turnkeying it for them so that they can have freedom, which they intended to have when they started their business, do what they want, when they want, with who they want, how they want, whenever they want. Get on with leaving a legacy and making an impact. So we do that basically as a family CFO for legacy minded, faith driven, hyper growth entrepreneurs. And so I hear so often, I've heard throughout your podcast, and I hear out in the world, quit our job, work. But I really believe God's placed us everywhere we are with an intentional place to serve. And I think the transformation of work is about living on purpose. And every time we learn something or have an experience, how do we make an adjustment or a tweak, even if it's as radical as just leaving our job, right? To go do something where we are deeper and more richly fulfilled.
Thank you for that. It really speaks to the path that we're all on, right? We're all trying to live with meaning and purpose in our lives. And it's sometimes easier said than done. I'd love to dive into your thoughts first on the FIRE movement. These are people trying to live with more meaning and purpose in their life and to use their money as a tool to do that. You work with a lot of people who, by any measure, are probably financially independent or creating financial independence. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this idea of the FIRE movement and kind of how you see money as a tool.
I think one of the things that I enjoy the most and I found is most helpful for a lot of the folks that I work with, whether they're clients or just people I interact with, I think our work is really about what are we doing that's our life purpose using those three unique capabilities. My podcast, Educated Freedom, we talk about culture, career, and cash flow. And the unique abilities is really all around that career piece. And so in simplifying, I think we overcomplicate and the industry overcomplicates money just in general because that distraction and complication takes people off of their purpose and it reduces the ability to hold people accountable. And so I think the first and foremost tenet is we're trading every single day of our life for something. And so a lot of the FIRE movement, especially in the tech community, is I'm making tons of money when I'm young, but maybe they don't love it or they don't like it, or they feel like they're trapped in some type of a culture. Number one, I don't think you should settle for that. And I also know that's easier said than done. But if you're going to trade your time, especially for money, then let's do it in a way that we also are as mindful with our money as we are with the time we're trading for it. When we have money, really, money only has one purpose. It's to spend it. What you're really doing is you're trading your time now to earn some money, and then effectively you're spending it on your future self. And you can spend it in a lot of different ways, a Roth, an IRA, put it in life insurance, put it in a brokerage account, buy commodities, gold, silver, crypto, real estate. Like all of those are ultimately options. But the most important option to be successful, at least in trying to escape and have that financial independence and retire early, right? Is our generation doesn't think about retirement like our previous generations do. Retirement is actually, I'm not really much of a fan of that word because I think the connotation culture's had over years is that's sitting on the porch watching the grass grow in a rocker, right? And to me, retirement, or what I like, is really financial independence or freedom. You can use your resources, time, talents, and money, and you can invest those so that you're doing meaningful legacy types of work. All these lessons that you'll learn that you can take with you to your business or whatever you're doing at that point, they're there on purpose if we're just aware, if that makes sense. And so not just getting tunnel vision, if you will, because that comes at a cost of being aware of those that we love and what's going on. And so I think sometimes the FIRE movement, we tend to facilitate too much of that. And so my hope is, or my belief is, simplifying will allow folks to not miss those gems that'll help them along the way too. You know what I mean?
What you're saying there is very interesting. It's like the purpose of money is to spend it. And you can spend it now by buying a car or a house or a vacation, or you can spend it on your future self. And there's benefits to both of those things, right? But think about it as like you're spending that money on your future self is a really useful way to look at it. I do agree that people often get that tunnel vision and they're like, let me just get to the end of this and then everything will be great. It's interesting because I talk to a lot of people in the fire movement, as you can imagine, and I have found that there's this huge problem that people get to where they want to get to 25x, or they get to whatever their number is. And then they realize not only did I probably waste a lot of opportunities, did I miss out on some things, especially if they are like sacrificing, which I don't think you need to do to reach financial independence by any
Right.
stretch. But some people do that. So there's that. And then they also don't know what they actually want because they
Yep.
haven't tried it out. And
Yes.
that's really what I look to serve people with is, with my envisioning and helping people answer the question first and foremost, what do you actually want? And then use the power of your mind to start creating that now rather than waiting till you get there. And I'm actually having this experience now. I was telling you before we started recording that like I've created some space in my life right now by taking a little bit of time off work. And I thought, oh, once I have that time, oh, it'll all just fall into place. It's like, actually, no, like, it doesn't just happen like that, and so it's like, "Alright, let me get clearer and clearer on what I actually want, what's most important to me, and then how do I start taking those steps?" Because as you said, like, this is our life, this is our one life, this is our journey. We should be intentional in enjoying it along the way, not just racing towards this arbitrary number and expecting everything to be great when we get there.
One of your previous guests said something I loved. He said, people plan and God smiles. God has so much greater, richer things that we can't even like, we don't even know what we don't know. Right. And what I really love about what you're doing, and I hope you appreciate this, Adam, is the same challenges show up over and over again with just different perspectives and flavors. So the challenge of this almost race to nowhere for kids in a high school to be able to get into a college because they believe they'll arrive.
Mm,
And then they race through college. And then now we've got a degree only to find out like, hey, the degree is not the magic ticket to a guaranteed like even job at this point,
it's true,
much
yeah.
less a career that means anything. And then you've got parents where we're in this race and we're completely distracted by raising our kids and sports and the arts and all these things. And then they go, and I'm living that right now, right? So we had kids young, and I'm late 40s, and I'm shooting at 120, 150 with health and technology potentially, right? And so we're going through like, what do me and my wife get to do? And how do we want to play in our kids' life? So we have to design that. And for a mom, she has kids, and that's her whole world for a season. Then, oh, wait, now you get to be, they're wired to care for the kids, but then now you need to have a purpose. And then if everything we are is just going and giving it away to a business, right? Or to a company, and then we retire, like there's massive depression across for these boomers and stuff because like they work and then it's like you think in your head you're going to go do all these things, all these vacations, but you can't do that forever. Here's an interesting exercise. I was listening to a podcast and they said if you had 365 days uninterrupted, money was no issue, travel was no issue, you could snap your fingers or wave your wand like in the Wizard of Oz and be wherever you wanted to be. How would you design 365 days of your life? And the interesting thing is, or observation I had is, it's easy to fill in like the first month. But what do you do? There's only so much golf you want to play, or there's only so much selling you want to do. And I was thinking about this because I love to go to the Masters. And I'm like, I would definitely want to be here, but like the Masters is only a week. So I've got 51 more weeks I've got, to do something with. And so I think what you're doing is so important because number one, there's things that we think we want. And when we try them out, like what you're doing, we discover, well, there's an element of it. But I think Ravikant said something to the effect of, what is our contract of something with ourself that as soon as we achieve it, the value and the purpose just, evaporates. And that's
Yeah.
how it feels sometimes, isn't it? It's like you get
Mhm.
there. Brady said, I won 3 Super Bowls. Is this it? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we got to try stuff on.
It's really interesting that's like this human condition of just like always wanting what we don't have and then getting it and being like, now what? Like we started talking about the fire movement. I really think about it not as financial independence, retire early. I think it is financial independence, reprioritize early. How can I reprioritize what I'm spending my time on? And you mentioned like designing 365 days of your life. Think about what you want your ideal day to look like. I get people to think really, really big, not because I want them to commit to some ambitious goal, but because I want them to break out of their constraints to like broaden the possibilities. But one of the things I really have people focus on is like, how do you want to feel? And
Mm,
as I have had this first week off from work, I'm like, how do I want to feel? This is not it. Like rushing and like trying to make things happen and like having a million ideas bouncing around my head of things I could do and feel like I should do. That's not it. I have this vision of wanting to have a very simple business that I work on because I want to.
yeah.
Financial independence means that I don't have to do it if I don't want to. I don't need to feel like it's gotta work to put food on the table, right? I want that, as you were saying, before about your clients, like I want to take the financial piece off the table, set it and forget it, know that it's going to do what it needs to do to support us, but create and build the business from a place of curiosity and connection. And this week, I wasn't feeling that, honestly. Like I was feeling very frantic. I was feeling probably because I just dove right into it. But I really am looking to like, can I start each day? Can I live each day like I envision living in this ideal future? And then see if I like it, right? Let me try it on and let me see if I like it. And then move forward from there and adjust. And sometimes it feels like we have to have it all figured out, but we really don't. And we can't. We
We're
literally can't.
we're all literally building the plane as we try to fly it. And the key to whether we
Exactly.
crash it or whether we successfully do it is, can we stay focused the majority of the time on our priorities and not be pulled away by all the distractions? I think 2024 is going to be a year of continuing to mount distractions, election, unrest in the Middle East, all kinds of stuff. And the reality is, you can go vote for the president, but the reality is you have a vote. Hopefully it matters, right? But the reality is, like, the market in years of elections averages about 11% up every year in every election year, right? Now, does that mean it can't? It could be less. Could it be more? It could. But the reality is, we don't have the ability to impact that trajectory. But what we do have the ability to impact is the trajectory of our kids, of our
Mm.
spouse, of the communities that we play in. And the number one thing that I want to encourage you to do is, I have a Friday morning men's accountability group that I started in COVID. And right now we're going through Bob Goff's book, Undistracted. And it's a great book. Bob Goff's a great author. And the greatest part is he tells stories and he can poke fun and laugh at himself. Like, one of the stories he shares is, I was in Africa and we were going to do something. They wanted to film something from the top of the water tower. And so I've got these balloons of helium and I'm charting my thing. And then for some moment I have a break in concentration. I look down and there's a rattlesnake that if he bit me, none of this would matter, right? And he goes,
Mm.
the story would be cooler if the rattlesnake bit me, but then I would have had to pull my hamstring to try to save my life. But the point is, he adds whimsy and some humor to basically saying, like, it's easy to get lost in the details and we don't see the dangers and the distractions and the risks that are like right there. Community does that for us. It gives us
Mm.
reflection, right? And choosing that, because we don't know what we don't know, but other people see us as greater than sometimes we do. Like sometimes
Mhm.
we're our own worst friend. It's like if a
Definitely.
friend talked to you the way you talk to yourself, how long would they be a friend? Maybe not long, right? But
Mhm.
we all need moments of Matt cares where somebody says, "Hey, wait a second, you've got this. This is a temporary circumstance." That's the value of picking good people around us community wise. And the thing that you can do in the fire movement or anywhere, wherever you're at, is choose to do life with people who have your values. Don't sacrifice time in life trying to impress people that honestly you don't care about. And
Yeah.
I think that's something the fire movement does really good because we so often hear, like, well, I can't really tell somebody that because they'll make fun of me. Almost like, network marketing. Oh, I can't tell somebody I'm in network marketing. They'll be like, oh, here comes that guy or gal. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be that way, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, you can surround yourself with people who are aligned with what you're trying to do. So, you had mentioned that I know a lot of the work that you do is helping families as like a family CFO. I would love to hear how you help them. And then, maybe we can talk a little bit about this idea of building a family business. So I really see this opportunity to create a place where people can come and reflect and do workshops and retreats and things like that. And I see that as a family business, right? So like
Yeah.
I would love to have my kids involved in that, taking care of the place and doing all these things and have my wife involved. I know this is possible. I've heard you mention it before. Would love to understand like how practically somebody can do that in their life. Let's start with again, what does a family CFO do? How do you help your clients? And then yeah, like this aspect of building a business as a family or hiring your kids. Would love to hear about that.
Yeah, so a lot of folks probably have heard of the book The E-Myth, right? By Michael Gerber. If you're in technology and let's say you want to do something that's meaningful and you create a business out of it, which I love, one of the things you realize in a lot of folks that are entrepreneurs or people that start a business is I'll just use like a trade. Let's say somebody's a plumber and they're working their tail off and they go, well, wait a second. Like I'm getting paid 80 bucks an hour. I can make 150 bucks an hour. And so the thing that takes us there is the desire to have that freedom. But what we don't realize is sometimes what we don't know can create a lot of upset until we grow through it. Right. And so, obviously, running a business, there's marketing, there's sales, there's fulfillment, like whether it's a service or a product, and there's customer service, and there's all these things. But what I find with a lot of really successful people in general is they're great at making money, but sometimes they're even more talented at giving it away. And that's something I love solving for folks. And that's what I do as a family CFO. Sometimes our ego gets in the way of us, or we have what we call transferred confidence. So let's say you're a tech executive and you're awesome. You're kicking butt and you're taking names and like you're in Google, right? And so some people like Google or Amazon's like, "Hey, I went to Harvard or Stanford." It's like, "Oh, how awesome would that be?" Right? And you're making tons of money. You get to experience huge growth and impact and all these things, and there's some notoriety to that, but you can't spend an experience at Google, right? And so it gives you some things, but maybe you discover there's some things I'd like to do, which I think you're doing an awesome job building on that. But part of the thing that's hard to take the step away and to do your own thing is it's scary, right? And so the pad that you can build with a fire deal helps you do that. But when you start to run a business, the number one expense, again, not interested in arguing it, is tax. But guess what? Tax is probably the number one expense you have, even as a W 2 employee, as well, in most cases. And the great thing about businesses, I believe, really true long term and legacy minded financial independence. Okay. The only way you can really do that is through a business, like a business of your own, because the tax law is set up to favor business owners. It just is. And the thing I love about your mindful movement, and I know that the intention with the fire movement is to have control of your destiny, so to speak, and to do it intentionally and meaningfully, is I think that's the greatest part about being an entrepreneur is that if you'll use your 3 to 5 unique capabilities, you can create transformative, better experiences for other people like what you're doing as a result of what you've learned along the way. But more importantly, how often with our kids, like, do we try to fix something? But the reality is, when we fix stuff or we keep our kids away from a pain or experience, we're actually handicapping them. I saw it for years in the college space, right? But one of the things that I realized was a game changer was to hire your kids. And to hire your kids legally, ethically, and morally, right? It allows you to do something that I like helping people do. We talk about multitasking, which you do that probably not well, right? You probably
Mhm.
do 3 things average or slightly above average, but nothing excellent. But you can have your dollars multi-purpose. You can use your business for a multi-purpose. Point in case, you're building your business. Okay, is your time best spent cleaning the office, doing social media, all these different types of things? And the answer is, can you do it? Yes. Should you do a little bit of it so that you can systematize it and then transfer it basically in delegation to somebody else? Martell talks about buying your time back. That's essentially what he's talking about, right? And so there's so many benefits from hiring your kids. Number one, the tax code currently allows you to pay your kid $13,000 in change, and they get that money tax free because of the individual standard deduction. Okay. And you go, wait a second, how can I hire my 12-year-old and pay them $13,000 a year? Okay. Well, the IRS code says you just have to pay them a reasonable competitive number. Start scanning what people are charging to manage social media. I mean, it's anywhere from 1,000 to $5,000 a month. So you can't say I'm going to hire my kid to do social media and they do nothing, but that's a skill set. Now that gives us an opportunity to teach our kids to use social media meaningfully and responsibly. And you're doing it with them, not for them, right? So we're empowering them. They can serve you. Now think of all the opportunities you get. If you had 2 kids, you've reduced your taxable income by 26 grand
Because the business is
because
paying them, so it's a
because
business
you've hired
expense.
them and the business is paying them. Now, I want to stop here. And one of the things that can get us in trouble is we try to do things that we really don't know what we're doing, like we love it. So, like somebody listening, even though I'm going to give you this public service announcement, you're going to hire your kid and you're going to start paying them. And if you do that and you don't do it correctly, you're going to create issues for yourself from a tax perspective and all of those things. Okay. So you got to do it right. Okay. And there's all kinds of like, do I got to put them on payroll? The answer is it depends. And we're not saying that like to be difficult or to get you to call me. Like it really does depend. There's ways to set up a family LLC that your business is segregated from. You pay the LLC, and the LLC, because of the guidelines, you don't have to do payroll, Social Security withdrawal, all of those things. You want to ask a professional to help you do that, number one. But number two, so you've got that going. Now you have an experience where your kid gets paid and you can teach them actually the same things that you're learning to do or you learned later that you wish you had learned and your parents had taught to you earlier, where you get to teach them to save or spend their dollars on a future self, future cause, future experience that they want. And so with
Mhm.
my kids, we've always had them spend 20%. 10% of it they would tithe with, but the other 10% they would save it for something that they wanted to do. It might be an experience, it might be acquire something that matters at their age as a game, but it also might be, hey, we're going on a trip and somebody needs something and my heart's being tugged to do something. You've got the capability to do that because kids can't hear what we say because they're too busy watching what we do. We're teaching them that intentionally. It also gives us an ability like, if you're 12, where are you spending 12 grand? So You also can now fund a Roth if you wanted to, or you can do all kinds of things. And you got to think, more times than not, when you're hiring your kid, they're not of age of majority. So you're going to set up a bank account. So now we get to go in and teach them how to set up a bank account. We can teach them how to ask questions. There's all of these things that we get opportunities to do. And now that makes your business meaningful, rich,
Mm,
purposeful, right? Because that's what life's about, is doing it and loving and investing in the people we care about. And I can't speak for everybody, but for me, the older I've gotten, if I have any areas that I won't even say regret, but I feel like maybe I wished I had learned quicker, I'd have done some of those small things that give, like, one effort gives an opportunity for so many benefits and rewards. And we want our kids to be successful, but everybody's definition is different. But what we also want is, we don't want, especially if we've experienced things that happen in life like divorce or losing a spouse or a parent or all those things that could happen. Like, if we're going to be in relationship, I think all parents want what's best for their kids. And we know that's certainly not in a unhealthy relationship. Well, money is the number one reason that people
mm,
go their separate ways. And so if you teach them the habits, and that's important to them as a value, not because just going and getting a bunch of money, but they understand how that can be a resource that just makes so many things more rich and more possible. They'll be looking and attracting people that those are important values. So the biggest deterrent from a successful, healthy relationship, at least of this world, being money, we can eliminate that for them and
mm.
they don't even realize it. Does that make sense? Versus,
Yeah.
how do we give in to them and let them have something because we're worried about all their friends have a cell phone and they don't? Like, we got to be on purpose, right? And so I love being able to hire our kids and to teach them to use money and all of those things. And I got to tell you, there's nothing more fun than watching your kid get their first paycheck. Like, if they go to Chick-fil-A or something and work, and they come home and they're mad and they're upset, and it's like, "Hey, son, what's wrong? I worked 20 hours and I'm supposed to be getting $8 an hour. And math says that's $160 and I've only got, 115 here." "What do you mean?" "Well, they took some out for, like, FICA, and they took some out for," and it's like, where's that? Okay. They need
It's
to
a good
know
lesson.
that. They need to
Yeah.
know that, and that creates great conversations. Does that
Yeah.
make
No.
sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. I came for the tax benefits, staying for the education. There's so many benefits of doing something like this and using your business in this way. Is there a limit of how young the kids can be?
So the answer is, the limitation is actually not age, which is what we would tend to default from. So I'll give you
Mhm.
an example that, like, let's say you're marketing. I'm not trying to encourage you to do something that's not beneficial for your business, but we've all made decisions that we thought were great business decisions that turned out to be big losers. Make sense?
Yep.
When I was running my health insurance practice, I had an agent come and they said, "Hey, look, I've got this great opportunity. We can advertise on the MARTA buses here, and we've got a captive audience. Like, they're sitting in a seat and they're going to see this ad." And I go, "Okay, so that's great. But what types of people ride MARTA buses to work?" And I'm not talking about, like, sex, origin, any of those things. I'm talking about, like, our ideal client is not sitting on a MARTA bus. Why? Because they're probably going to town, working for a company, working for the government. And so they get health insurance. So, newsflash, they're not buying health insurance from you, right? And so we have this battle for our time, our attention, our money, especially as business owners. Nobody's ever had somebody say, "Hey, look, Adam, you should advertise in the yellow pages. It sucks. It won't work, but you should give us your money anyway." Like,
Right.
nobody ever has that. So we have to kind of be buyer beware, if you will, on those types of scenarios. Okay. But with that said, let's say that you live in a neighborhood where, there's a lot of tech folks, and you're like, "Hey, I know just from community at the pool or whatever, there's a lot of folks that are kind of in the fire deal." So you go, "You know what? I don't know everybody. It's a big neighborhood. I'm going to advertise in my HOA thing that I do mindfulness." coaching.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So you go, all right, what goes into the ad? You go, well, most folks in mindfulness, like family's important to them. They want to do stuff with their kids. They want to create a family business. So you come up with the idea that for $1,000, you can be in the HOA newsletter every quarter. So $4,000 total investment in the HOA newsletter, right? Good value, bad value, who knows, right? But now you've got to get an ad and you go, well, you know what? I've got some pretty cute kids. And that kind of represents family. And so I'll come up with a nifty tagline. You may get zero business. And you go, well, that's a total failure. It's not, because we learn what works and doesn't along the way, but we can take pictures or have somebody take pictures of us and our kid, and we can now hire our kids as a model for our business. How do we do that? Well, we have to pay them fair market. What would you do? You'd pick up the phone, call a couple modeling agencies and say, hey, I need a couple of kids, one about 3, one about 7. I'd like a girl and a guy. What would it cost for me to have them for a day available to take pictures? And
Mhm.
they'll tell you, and all you do is just ask them to send you a proposal. You keep
Mhm.
that proposal, you get 2 or 3, you take the average, so you're paying fair market value. You don't get crazy like they go, "Oh, you could hire them for 3,000," and one says 2,000. So you go, "I want a really good one, and if I was running a really high price one, I would charge 5,000." That's stupid. That's the
It's a
pigs
little
get slaughtered
Yeah,
mentality,
that's a
right?
little greedy, yeah.
Yeah. So you get that, and you could hire a newborn, your kid, but you're probably not going to do that for $13,000. You're probably going to do it for 2 or 3. Make sense? If you're wanting to start a college fund, you pay them the 2 to 3 grand. That's 3 grand you don't have tax on. So now you're funding college with tax-free dollars. If you put it in a 529 or another tax advantaged vehicle, then it grows tax-free. So now we're multi-purposing our dollars as well as getting a tax break. So we just have to have a competitive. So the key is really not the age. The age does have to be appropriate for what you hire them for, though. So,
Right.
you can't hire a 7-year-old as a driver. They can't even get a license. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
So it's really more of that piece, if that makes sense. Does that help?
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be like a regular thing necessarily. It could be like a one-time thing a couple times a year where
Sure.
you map it out and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna need these things. I can get them to do this for me,
And
pay them fair market value for it."
let's go back to that example just to kind of be creative and put it on steroids, right? Like, so
Mhm.
you're going to give them an ad and let's say it's going to run every month and you say, "Hey, I'd like to change the picture up." A smart business owner who's done it once or twice, they would only take pictures one time and they just use different pictures and scenes from
Right,
that one time. But if it
right.
was the first time you did it, you might not. So you might hire your kids and you might take different pictures in different seasons. So
Mhm,
now you've got for $1,000 a time, as an example, you've
mhm.
got 4 times once each season that now you could pay your kids $1,000 per sitting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
One of the things that will give people in the FIRE movement or folks seeking financial independence is I have learned the hard way that the environment works 24/7, 365. And so we're talking about transferring great habits to our kids because we want them to have a better life than we do. But we have to model what we expect them to do, like I said, because they can't hear what we're saying because they're blinded by what they see us doing. And so over the last 3 years, I've been working on a system that we call simple automated cash flow. And I want to gift that to anybody who's listening, and we'll talk about that later. But it's a way that you delegate intentionally to your environment. So rather than feeling like you have to sacrifice to stack money, it happens, as I like to say, automagically. And then, secondly, we often hear about budgets, and budgets have a connotation kind of like diets is negative. We got to sacrifice or do without. But we do an exercise with our clients that I think your community would love, where we give them a spreadsheet and they put all their monthly stuff in there, but only their monthly stuff, not their Christmas fund, because they'll spend it unknowingly and unnecessarily. Because how do we tend to look at our money? We pull up our phone and we look at an app, and if there's money in there, we've got money for pizza. So we design an environment that we can delegate to. But you put those things in, we round it up. So you have a pad and you're working from a space of abundance. And after we do that for 3 or 4 months, we don't tell them they can't go to Starbucks or whatever. It's their money. They earned it. They should decide, hopefully intentionally versus passively, where it goes. So we take all the numbers off, we alphabetize all the expenditures, and then we ask them to prioritize just 1 through 10 or 20, whatever the number of expenses are. Prioritize the things that are most important. You could imagine a mortgage be right there at the top, and we prioritize them, and then we resort them with the
Mhm.
priorities, and then we take the numbers that they're spending on a monthly basis and put them next to it. And so if item number 12 is the fifth largest expenditure, we don't say shame on you because that's not helpful. We go, okay, so this is what you said was important and it was priority and you want. This is where your dollars are going. If it matters, it's measurable, right? You're not in trouble. It's, do we want to change what we want or do we want to change what we're doing? And that alignment exercise gets us faster to that financial freedom because we don't have the friction, the guilt, and the conflict internally. And that's, again, another system we can teach our kids, that then they're automatically just saving money when they go out and get their own job and all of those things. So I think that's a lot better way than just like, I have to do without everything, because it only takes losing a friend or a spouse or a friend's parent to cancer or something. You go, wait a second, what am I doing? Like, I got to live
Mhm.
tomorrow.
It's a huge element of this journey for me, and the reason why I'm, like, not willing to wait until I hit the number to start living the life I wanna live, and that's why I encourage and teach people to do the same. Use the money that you're accumulating to live now and to
Yes.
set yourself up in the future, right? You don't have to
Yep.
choose one or the other. You can start getting clear on what you want and start living that life now. So those resources sound awesome. Where can people find those?
Either check me out on LinkedIn, Andrew Windham on LinkedIn. That's kind of the social medium of choice. I've got Twitter and some other things, but I'm trying to be undistracted, and too many of those gets me off of purpose.
Sure.
So there's a place, but you can also email me, Andrew at educatedfreedom.com, and just put Mindful Fire Podcast, and we'll send them basically a how to hire your kid in like 73 jobs that your kid could be hired to do. And we're also going to send them what we call our simple automated cash flow diagram so you can understand how to set it up, as well as that monthly expense and value worksheet. And I think those two things combined are a really nice trifecta to help them get ahead. And then we'll also shoot you a link to schedule an opportunity to do a financial roadmap experience if you'd like to do that. But we're certainly not pushing that. But I do believe everybody deserves to enjoy a financial roadmap experience. And what we do there is we help them align their values with their money, set goals that are aligned with their values, and then help them figure out where they're at and what it's going to take to get there. And then they can do it on their own or seek help, support, guidance, whatever it is, right?
So, Andrew, let's shift gears now into the Mindful Fire Final Four. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So, the first question's all about envisioning. And I'm curious. I really like to hear people's big vision for the future. So, I'm curious about your big vision for your life. Sounds like, the kids are out of the house. You and your wife are kind of rediscovering what life looks like. So, I'm curious as, you think a few years out, what is the big vision for your life and business?
COVID brought for me a point of clarity and reflection, and I don't reflect in journal enough, but I try to do that a lot. And that's compliments of reading a book, The Road to Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham, which is a great book to check out.
What a title.
Yeah, and the concept is basically, you owe it to yourself to spend at least 15 minutes a week thinking about what's important, and that helps us get realigned. And so my vision and what came out of getting my podcast ready to go is I want everything that I do to be about serving, modeling how to live my highest purpose all day, every day, in every role that I play. And we look at that from a culture, meaning we got to lead ourselves, lead our family, and then that spills over to being able to be the same person at work and in the community so we can maximize impact. Career, we got to identify and leverage our unique 3 to 5 capabilities. When we do that, we're serving our highest purpose. When we hire other people doing that as well, we raise the experience for everybody and we give others the gift to serve us while we serve them. And the third is around cash flow. And it's not just money, but business owners get what that is. If you don't have cash and it doesn't flow, then your life and your business don't go. But really, cash flow is just a representation financially, but cash flow is about resource, financial resource, time resource, talent resource, mindful resource, doing that in a way that we are most closely aligned and most is best to our capability, given what we know where we're at the given time. We're living on purpose.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. The second question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
That's a great question. And I would say, number one, try to break free from the perfection paradigm. It's progress over perfection. Expedite the rate of failure. And a piece of that is work on your emotional intelligence so that you're more coachable and teachable. One of the oldest organisms in our world is a sponge. We need to be more spongy, willing to absorb and not be attached emotionally to the result or to judgment. Just be curious in our learning and then try and apply. Does that make sense?
Mm, hmm. I very much need to hear that today. That's for sure. So
Well,
thank you
good.
for that. I think it's so true. And I mean, that's what mindfulness is all about. It's about having a kind, curious awareness of what is happening, right? Not judging it, good or bad, but yeah, progress over perfection. I mean, that I should get that tattooed on my forehead. All right, Andrew. The third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
Yeah, so I think the time of reflection is important, but there's a tool I really struggled trying to do meditation early. Like I felt like back to the progress over perfection paradigm, like I sucked at it, right? And so nobody likes doing stuff they suck at. So I'm like, I'll just never be a good meditator or whatever. But there's a tool that I use and I try to use on a regular basis. It's called Newcom. It's an app that I have on my phone and you can do it monthly. I did a lifetime membership at the time and I really struggled. Do I spend the $2,500 for the lifetime membership? But I can tell you that it's been one of the greatest investments because the meditation stuff, I'm a big fan of have a system and delegate. And so Newcom is kind of the system where I've used somebody else's knowledge and being great at how the brain works and brain waves and states and how we can impact with intentionality, right? And so Newcom has like a deep sleep one that you can listen to. They've got one for creativity, flow state. They call Ignite. And they use technology and sound to get your brain waves aligned with a certain area. And so I try to use some stuff like that. And I become a better meditator. And that's not traditional meditation. In that, as you calm your mind, which is a lot of what meditation is, the part that I fought with was I'm being distracted. And so the second piece of that the new comms helped me be better at is it's not about beating yourself up that you're distracted. It's like be aware of it and let it go. Be
Hmm.
aware of it and let it go. Almost like water off of a duck's back. But Newcom has helped me do that tremendously well.
Interesting. I've never heard of that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, the final question is, where can people connect with you online, learn more about your business, and get those awesome resources you just told us about earlier?
Just go to LinkedIn, check me out there, shoot me a DM, follow me. I try to post a lot of content. But if you want those resources, just email me, Andrew at educatedfreedom.com. Put Mindful Fire Podcast, and we'll send you all of that. The how to hire your kid, the simple automated cash flow with the values monthly exercise, a link if you'd like to set up a financial roadmap experience.
Awesome. Cool. All right, Andrew, thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to hear your story and kind of some of the things that you've learned and helped people with in their life and finances. So I really appreciate you being here.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, man.